You've probably eaten a fast food breakfast sandwich this month without thinking twice about it. Grab a coffee, unwrap the foil, done, but take that exact same sandwich to London or Berlin, and parts of it would get pulled at customs not because of taste, but because a European food safety officer would look at the ingredient label and see something closer to industrial chemistry than food. That's not an exaggeration. It's a real gap between how two of the world's biggest food regulators think. The FDA generally treats an ingredient as safe until there's solid proof it isn't. The European Food Safety Authority works the opposite way. If there's credible lab evidence a substance could cause cancer or mess with hormones, it gets banned first. And the burden is on the manufacturer to prove it's safe before it ever reaches a shelf. So, which ingredients are we actually talking about? A few of these might already be in your kitchen. Number 7. The bun azotic carbonamide start with the bun. Most fast food bread, burger buns, breakfast sandwiches, whatever's holding your lunch together gets its soft, springy, artificially uniform texture from a dough conditioner called azotic carbonamide, or ARA. Here's the part that gets people's attention. The exact same chemical is also a foaming agent used to manufacture yoga mats, shoe soles, and synthetic leather. That alone doesn't make it dangerous. Plenty of compounds do totally unrelated jobs in food versus industry. What matters more is what happens to ADA in a hot oven. It breaks down into two byproducts, semicarbazide and urethane, which several animal studies have linked to higher tumor rates and respiratory problems. The World Health Organization has also documented that factory workers who are regularly exposed to ADA just breathing it, not eating it, develop asthma and allergic reactions at higher rates. That was enough for the EU to ban it from food outright. Singapore goes further, use it in food there, and you're looking at fines or jail time. The FDA's position is that it's safe in small quantities, so it's still legal and still in a lot of the bread on your plate this morning. Number 6. The crust potassium bromate is doing similar work in a lot of pizza crusts, burger buns, and rolls. It strengthens gluten so dough rises higher and bakes up with that bright white color commercial bakeries like. It's cheap and it's fast, which is exactly why it's stuck around. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies it as a Category 2B carcinogen, real suspicion of causing cancer in humans, based on lab animals developing kidney and thyroid tumors after exposure. The EU banned it in 1990. The UK, Canada, Brazil, and China all followed. The FDA took the softer route. Instead of banning it, the agency just asked American bakeries to voluntarily stop. Some did, a lot didn't. So that's what's happening to your bread before you even get to the drink. Number 5. The fountain drink brominated vegetable oil soda has its own story, and this one actually has a twist ending. Citrus sodas need something to keep the flavor oils from separating and floating to the top, and for decades, the US used an ingredient called brominated vegetable oil, or BEVO, to do that. It was originally developed as a flame retardant before it got repurposed for beverages. Bromine doesn't leave the body easily. It builds up in fatty tissue over time, and heavy long-term exposure has been linked to a condition called bromism, neurological problems, memory issues, skin lesions, fatigue. Europe banned BEVO from food decades ago and switched to plant-based alternatives. Here's the twist: the US actually caught up on this one. After FDA-led studies found thyroid damage in animal testing, the FDA formally revoked BEVO's approval in 2024, and companies had until August 2025 to get it out of their products for good. So if you're drinking a mainstream citrus soda today, it almost certainly doesn't contain BEVO anymore. It's a rare case of the FDA banning something outright instead of just asking nicely, which raises the question of why that same urgency hasn't shown up for the other ingredients on this list. Number 4. The farm ractopamine and growth hormones now for what happens before any of this reaches a fryer. A lot of US beef and pork comes from animals given ractopamine, a drug that changes how their bodies metabolize feed-building muscle and burning fat fast right before slaughter. It's efficient, less feed, leaner meat, faster turnaround. It's also rough on the animal's cardiovascular stress, trembling, in some cases full physiological collapse. Human trials of the drug were actually cut short because test subjects' heart rates spiked. That's part of why more than 160 countries, including the entire EU, Russia, and China, banned ractopamine and won't import meat treated with it. The EU also bans 6 growth hormones that are routine in American cattle, citing links to early puberty and hormone-related cancers. None of that has changed how livestock is raised in the US. Livestock isn't the only place efficiency wins out over caution. It shows up in how the meat gets preserved. Number 3. The fryer paw and butt, freeze, and fried chicken need to survive weeks in a warehouse without going rancid, and that shelf life mostly comes down to 2 preservatives, paw and butt. They're in the frying oil, the processed meat, the chips. Sometimes even the wax coating on the packaging. The U.S. National Toxicology Program lists BAHA as reasonably anticipated to cause cancer in humans based on consistent tumor development in animal studies. Both BAHA and BET also interfere with hormone function. The EU restricted BAHA heavily and pushed manufacturers towards safer alternatives like vitamin E. In the US, both are still standard, usually buried in ingredient lists under something like preservatives added to maintain freshness. Number 2. The color dyes and titanium dioxide, then there's color. Red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, and titanium dioxide give American fast food its bright, consistent look, the red sauce, the yellow cheese, the white frosting. A well-known study out of Southampton University found a link between these synthetic dyes and hyperactivity and attention problems in children. The EU's response was a mandatory warning label. Any product containing these dyes has to state on the package that it may affect children's activity and attention, faced with putting a warning label on their own product. Most big food brands simply reformulated, swapping in paprika, turmeric, and beet juice for their European versions. The American versions kept the synthetic dyes. Titanium dioxide was banned outright in the EU after regulators found evidence it could damage DNA. It's still legal and still common in the US. Number 1. The chicken chlorine wash, last one. And it's probably the most well-known example of this whole pattern. Chicken. U.S. Poultry is often raised in crowded, high-density conditions where bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter spread easily. To make the meat safe to sell, processors dip it in chemical baths, chlorine, peracetic acid, and chlorine dioxide. The EU banned chlorine-washed poultry back in 1997, and the reasoning is worth sitting with. It's not really that the chlorine itself is dangerous at those levels. It's that washing the outside of the meat lets farms get away with unsanitary conditions everywhere else in the process. Europe's rule is that food safety has to be built in from the farm, not sprayed on at the end. The US also used arsenic-based drugs like roxarsone in poultry feed for years, partly because it gave the meat a more appealing pink color that's since been phased out under public pressure, but chlorine washing is still standard. So that's 8 ingredients, 1 country, 2 very different food safety philosophies. The US system leans on proving it's dangerous before we act. Europe leans on proving it's safe before we allow it. Neither approach is perfect. Europe's version can be slow and overly cautious, and America's has let some genuinely questionable stuff stick around for decades. I'm not saying to panic and clear out your pantry. I'm saying it's worth reading a label every once in a while and remembering that legal in the US doesn't automatically mean settled science. If even one of these surprised you, tell me which one in the comments. I'm curious what people didn't already know. And if you want more of this kind of breakdown, subscribe because there's more where this came from.